Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Your Wealth Matters. I'm Janet Kim Singh, Portfolio Manager at Capstone Asset Management, and I'm joined today by my colleague and fellow Portfolio Manager, Maria Dawes.
Hello.
Today, we want to talk about something almost everyone experiences at some point, getting your financial plan back on track after falling off course, or perhaps realizing you were never really working from a financial plan in the first place, and now recognizing the need for one. Both situations are incredibly common. Let's talk about what causes this and, more importantly, how to get things straightened out because, as we all know, life rarely unfolds in a straight line. And sometimes the setback comes from the investments themselves. An investment doesn't perform the way anyone expected or takes longer to play out than planned. That's a hard experience, and it's a real one. When it happens, the plan needs to be updated with honest numbers, and the path forward needs to reflect where things actually stand today. So while this session was originally called Falling Off Your Financial Plan, we decided to frame it differently and call it Finding Your Way Back After Falling Off the Plan. Because the truth is, falling off the plan is normal. It is not a failure. In many ways, it is simply part of living life.
Yeah, that's right. So financial plans are not guarantees about the future, right? They're just simply projections built using the best information and assumptions that we have available at a specific moment in time. Over the years, people experience all kinds of difficulties and events that can pull them away from their original plan. Sometimes, these events are really hard, like losing a job, experiencing a health challenge, going through a separation, supporting aging parents, helping your children, or even dealing with really big unexpected expenses. Maybe you receive an inheritance, or you decide to retire earlier, or your circumstances change in a really positive way. And markets can add another level of unpredictability to every plan. Investment returns rarely arrive evenly or in the order that we would expect them to. So some years are strong, some years are more uncomfortable and disappointing, and we tend to get a variety of different things over time. And the longer time you have, the more unexpected things arise.
Where people tend to struggle is not necessarily with falling off the plan itself, but with what happens next. Many investors continue measuring themselves against a version of the plan that no longer reflects reality. The assumptions changed, but the expectations did not. And that is often where frustration and discouragement begin.
Yeah, so that's why reviewing your financial plan regularly is really important. A financial plan is not something you just create once and ignore it for 20 years. It should evolve alongside your life and circumstances. Reviews create the opportunity to ask important questions, such as, given everything that has changed, does this plan still make sense? Are my goals still the same? Sometimes your answer is yes, and only a few adjustments are really needed. Other times it might mean revisiting retirement timelines, updating spending assumptions, adjusting savings targets, or even totally reevaluating your investment risk and how much would be appropriate and suitable for your circumstances. The purpose of a review is not to judge past decisions. That's important. It's really to ensure the plan reflects your current reality rather than an outdated version of your life.
And when plans are not reviewed, people often feel behind without fully understanding why. In many cases, the issue is not that the person failed. The issue is that the assumptions underneath the plan may no longer match today's environment or their current situation. That's why reviewing the inputs and assumptions behind a plan is so important. A strong financial plan starts with reasonable expectations around savings, timelines, spending, and investment returns.
Exactly. A plan is only as durable as the assumptions underneath it, and sometimes we have to be brutally honest. If the return assumptions are too optimistic or the risk in the portfolio was different from what the plan assumed, the plan will drift from reality even when the investor did everything right. Reasonable assumptions create a more durable plan. And as an aside, there's a planning tool called the Monte Carlo analysis. This is something that can be really incredibly helpful. Rather than relying on on a straight line outcome, a Monte Carlo analysis will stress test your plan. It'll project a plan across thousands of different market scenarios, including strong markets, weak markets, periods of inflation, and higher volatility environments. What's helpful about this approach is that it moves the conversation away from certainty and a straight line experience and towards probability. So it'll say, if I encounter a decade that maybe has the worst market returns, what is the probability of success versus a normal market versus maybe a decade with the very best returns? How do things change? And this can really help see where a plan really is at, because of course we don't know what our future is going to hold.
And for many investors, that shift in thinking is actually very reassuring because now we are no longer talking about certainty or perfection. We are talking about probabilities of success and about reviewing the plan regularly as life and markets evolve. Because success in financial planning is usually not about getting everything exactly right. More often it comes down to a few simple things done consistently over long periods of time. And we all know that time matters enormously when it comes to investing. Time gives investors the ability to recover from difficult market periods. It also gives them flexibility, the opportunity to adjust spending, savings, or investment strategies if things begin drifting off track. But consistency matters just as much. There is tremendous value in what we sometimes call being a steady Eddie investor, someone who continues contributing over time, stays disciplined during difficult markets, and avoids making sudden changes based on short-term headlines. That's different from thoughtfully reassessing after something real has changed. Reviewing the plan after a setback isn't an emotional reaction. It's exactly what a review is for. And what's interesting is that a lot of the research around investor behavior shows that long-term success is often less about finding the perfect investment and more about simply sticking with the process. The people who tend to do well are often the ones who keep contributing consistently, even when markets feel uncomfortable or uncertain. They keep investing through the ups and downs, and over time, that discipline and consistency can really add up through compounding. The people who tend to succeed over the long term are usually not the ones chasing perfect timing or extraordinary returns. More often, they're the ones who remain patient, realistic, and consistent through different market environments.
Yeah, and importantly, they build plans around reasonable risk and return assumptions rather than unrealistic expectations or probabilities. And what I mean by that is there's a professional organizations really around the world, but FP Canada is one here that publishes projected long-term planning assumptions. And right now, those assumptions are pretty modest. They have bonds projected over the long term to earn 3%, a little bit more than 3%, and equities around 6% over the long term. So for someone who's invested in a balanced portfolio, you can start to see the math, right? Achieving a classic 5% long-term return assumption may actually require taking on a meaningful level of investment risk that perhaps you hadn't anticipated. So that's why it's so important to ask whether the inputs you're using in the plan are really reasonable. Are your return assumptions realistic? Is the level of risk aligned with your comfort and your financial capacity to take risk? And just as importantly, is your time horizon long enough? Because retirement today can last a really long time. FP Canada projections suggest that for heterosexual couples, there's at least a 25% chance that one spouse will live to age 98. That's potentially 30 years of retirement income that needs to be planned for, and even longer for those who retire early or who choose to take CPP or OAS earlier at reduced benefits. So this is why thoughtful planning matters so much, not because the future is perfectly predictable, but because realistic assumptions and regular reviews can help people adapt as life unfolds.
And because ultimately a good financial plan should not just look good on paper, it should be realistic so that you can actually live it.
Yeah, exactly. Falling off a financial plan is actually really normal. So revisit it, adjust it, and continuing forward is what actually matters.
So thank you for joining us today on Your Wealth Matters. And if you feel like your plan needs a review, or perhaps you have never put one together in the first place, we would encourage you to reach out. We would be happy to help point you in the right direction and help you to take the next step forward. We'll see you next time.